people aren't even buying UFC pay-per-views.
Yeah.
And you're trying to tell me, because odds are, I don't think there's anybody who watches Jake Paul fight that doesn't watch the UFC.
Well, what's interesting, have you ever noticed this? So when Jake Paul and Logan both talk about their pay-per-views, they'll talk about pay-per-view and then they'll talk about how many illegal streams, like how many were illegal streamed. But the UFC doesn't talk about how many they illegally stream, obviously, because it's a well-developed.
Not only that, how do you know?
I think you can estimate based on what I think there's ways of doing it, you know?
All right.
Like, I think you could look.
I know somebody who illegally streams, and then on top of that, in another service, streams it to 10 other people. How are you going to calculate that? You can't.
Yeah.
So there's no way. If you're already illegally streaming a fight, you're probably streaming it to your boys as well. So It's like, how do you calculate that?
How do you calculate the numbers? Right.
So I don't believe that for a second. I also see what Dana White is saying about how, like, there is just not a chance in hell that Jake Paul's putting up these numbers. Because he's like, what person is buying that fight? Like, the 13-year-old kid is paying for it to watch Jake Paul fight? I don't think that's his audience anymore.
That's a very good point.
Anyone who's watching Jake Paul watches UFC. Anyone who's watching Jake Paul fight, I mean. Anyone who's watching that boxing match watches UFC. It's not, there's not a pocket of people that exist out there that only watch Jake Paul fight. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Like the type of person who watches a Jake Paul boxing match also watches UFC.
I'm surprised YouTube hasn't tried to strike a deal with him in the sense of, hey, we'll get you the eyeballs.
Let me just get to my point real quick.
Oh, sorry.
If you're watching UFC, you're not paying for UFC. You're stupid if you do. Everybody is not paying.
Dana, don't.
That's why Dana's numbers are already low. And they're still good numbers, but that's why they're already low. There's no chance that if you, as a UFC enjoyer who knows how to pirate UFC streams, is going to then say, you know what? Let me pay for a Jake Paul fight.
I think there are the purists out there who are like, man, I'm always going to pay because I love the UFC and I want them to do well.
No, okay, but then turn that on to Jake Paul. What person is a purist on a Jake Paul fight? That's
a good point.
You can't tell me my grandfather who loves boxing so much is going to pay pay-per-view for Jake Paul's fight. Like, I don't care. Like, the generation that pays for pay-per-views is older than us. And yes, they might be more boxing focused compared to mixed martial like UFC, but they're not paying for a Jake Paul fight. Maybe a Tyson Fury fight, Tank Davis, like something like that. But they're not paying for Jake Paul.
Do you think that... Okay, wait, I'm going to take you a different way. Just derail the conversation real fast. Do you think pay-per-view is going to be... I don't want to say obsolete, but do you think that there's going to be a point to it? Like, do you think the pirating is getting so bad that pay-per-view is kind of going to have to go away and they have to find a different method? Because to your point, it's way too easy to pirate.
Well, we kind of already have some information on this, you and I, that I don't know if we want to bring up here on this podcast.
Oh, that's a fair point, yeah.
Because that is what's going to happen in the future.
Gotcha, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Without spoiling anything, I'd say...
That's a good point. I totally forgot about
pay-per-view will go away eventually because of the pirating.
Why do you know that, brother?
But the solution will be a subscription-based system that will give you all the fights.
That's a very good
quality.
point. I think we could say
it's not going to be a one-time purchase of a fight. It's whatever organization will host a subscription-based process.
Brother, this is genius. How do you have this?
I can't say how I know the info.
Man, one of these days, one of our viewers are going to figure out what the hell we do. And it's either way, I think it is impressive, though, that Jake has gotten this far from being a YouTube blogger to kind of basically shit-talking his way to a boxing career. Mm-hmm. And now you could make the argument with the Tommy Fury one that he could move into that kind of space of going down the professional route. And to me, this fight that was on Friday...
That's what I was going to look up.
The fight on Friday was kind of him stepping in and seeing, can I actually do this professional boxing stuff?